Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am actually making a card kit for my Etsy shop. So this is going to give you a little, I guess, back scene sneak peek, if you will, into how I make my card kits for my Etsy shop. So I have my card bases I've already folded and scored them, cut and scored them, and I'm going to stamp my logo on the back of just one of them, and then the remaining ones I'm going to stamp this with love. This gives my the person that purchases this card kit a chance to sign the back of their card. I do this to all of my card kits. I do my logo on one because I include one completed card, and then I do the with love so that the person that created it can sign their card. I have 3 pink envelopes and 3 red envelopes. These are just from Paper Studio. And I have several just plain white A2 sized panels here that I'm going to use to do my stamping and my die cutting. We are going to use several background stamps today. Well, several, I mean by 2. We are going to be using the Simon Says stamp Love Is background. We are using the Honey Bee Buffalo Plaid background, and I'm using this Altenew Magnolia Heart stamp set. I'm also using this Avery Elle Hogs and Kisses. Has tons of little punny sentiments, and the big reason why I wanted to use it, is because it has those die cuts. It has the dies with it. So these are going to be the main focus of these card kits, and I'm going to stamp them in Gina K Amalgum ink. I do that for 2 reasons. One, it is a good quality black ink, but the second reason is that I'm going to include these critters, but they're not going to be colored already. So this gives the recipient or the creator of these cards the chance to color them with whatever medium they have. So if they wanted to use watercolors or crayons or colored pencils or markers, whatever medium they chose, this ink is going to be friendly and conducive to that. So that is why I chose this particular black ink. Otherwise, I probably would have chosen a different one. I end up coloring my images with some Copic markers later on, but I chose that ink because it is so very versatile for whatever the creator of the rest of these cards decides to use. I'm going to pull out the cow, the pig, and the lamb that hold the heart. And then I'm going to end up taking some of these larger sentiments, these, punnier sentiments, and I'm going to stamp those on a separate panel. I did include a couple of hearts in this kit, and so I will stamp those out also. But we're just going to go ahead and get these images picked up with the door of my stamp positioning tool here, and we are going to stamp those out using that black ink. I do end up stamping these twice, just so that I have a very bold, crisp image, but they didn't need a third stamping or anything. That ink pad has been fairly recently re-inked, and so it's not too bad. So I do stamp them out twice. Ooh, twice. I don't even know what I was trying to say. And then I will take those coordinating dies and die cut them out. I have positioned the sentiments that I chose to use in my stamp positioning tool again, and I'm going to use 3 different Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively saturated inks in tidepool, peony, and cherry, I believe. Yes. And I'm going to stamp out those sentiments twice, once in the tidepool and then once in the cherry. I end up using that peony. I thought I was going to stamp out the sentiments in the peony. I decided not to. I just did the cherry and the tidepool. I'll clean them, and then I will flip my cardstock around and stamp them in the cherry. So there are those sentiments all stamped out. I will end up taking those and using my paper trimmer just to cut those into a squared off little sentiment banner, essentially. I'm going to take these coordinating dies, tape them in place, and run them through. And again, one of the main reasons why I chose this is A, I love the punny sentiments. I think they're funny and cute. But B, it has these coordinating dies, which is very helpful because I am not a fan of fussy cutting. And I can't always rely on my brother Skin and Cat to pick things up properly. And so having these coordinating dies is very helpful. So I'll just get those positioned, taped in place, and run them through my die cut machine. We're going to move on to stamping some of these background panels. So these are A2 sized white card panels. They measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to stamp this Simon Says stamp Love Is background stamp. And I could use my MISTI, but I want to show you another way to do this if you don't have a MISTI. So I have placed that that stamp face up onto my work surface. I've inked it up with that tidepool ink, and I am going to position this panel on it. I'm going to hold it down with one hand, and then I'm going to rub it all around so I can make sure I get good ink transfer on every bit of this card front panel so that I can get all of that. And I place just a piece of scrap cardstock on there just so I can protect my hands from getting ink absolutely everywhere. I must have shifted just a little bit. There was a little bit of double stamping on this. I ended up re-stamping this. I thought I could get away with it. I just didn't feel good about that because, you know, this is something that somebody's going to purchase from me, I hope. And so I decided that I would go ahead and re-stamp that. And so I did off camera. But I'm going to switch to the cherry, and I'm going to stamp the same background stamp in the cherry ink. And I do a little better job of not shifting this time. But this is just another way to use these big background stamps if you don't have a ginormous acrylic block or you don't have a stamp positioning tool of any variety that'll fit it. So I just try to make sure that I've got things lined up. Since this is a text, I don't want it to be all like cockeyed. And so I try to do my best to make sure that that is straight. And I'm going to repeat the same thing, ink it up with that cherry ink, hold it down with one hand, and then rub it around with the other, and making sure that I get the ink all over. And I did a much better job this time. I'm going to do this again with this plaid stamp from Honey Bee. This is their Buffalo Plaid background stamp. This is a clear stamp. I feel like red rubber stamps are a little more forgiving as far as getting crisp images, and I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think maybe because they're already mounted, whereas these photopolymer stamps are not. And so I am just making sure that I ink up this stamp really, really well with this cherry ink, and I will stamp this again with that peony ink. But again, I'm just placing it on my work surface, inking it up really good, and then I'm going to try to position this paper on there as straight as possible and do the same thing. And I will repeat this same process with the peony ink from Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively Saturated line. To create the third and final background, I'm going to use that Magnolia Heart stamp set from Altenew, and I'm going to just randomly stamp this all over this background. I am essentially making my own pattern paper, and this is one way that you can accomplish that. You want to ensure that you have images that stamp off the edges of the paper. That just gives it a more natural look, like you pulled it off of an entire ream of paper instead of you like blocked it off. It just looks more organic and more natural and when you have images that flow over the edge of the cardstock. I'm going to go back through. These looked kind of empty, for lack of better words, when I was done stamping. I could have gotten them a little closer together when I was stamping, but I didn't. And so I do end up taking another stamp from that Magnolia, the Simon Says Stamp Hogs and Kisses. No, it's not Simon Says. It's Avery Elle Hogs and Kisses stamp set, just to kind of fill in some of those blank spots. And I chose to do the tidepool and the cherry ink for this particular background. So I'm going to repeat the same process with the cherry, and then all of the backgrounds will be done for this particular card kit. Here I'm going to take that peony ink and a small, like I said, that one of the smaller stamps, just to fill in the blanks, some of those open areas on the card front panels. I think this is supposed to be like a butterfly. It doesn't really look like a butterfly to me. I do have some like dot stamps in my stash. Those would have been a good option as well. But here are those two all complete. So I did have a little schmutz of ink on this red panel, and I'm just going to take a mono sand eraser and try to sand that away as best as possible. I get most of it gone, and it's pretty hard to see when I have sanded that as best I can. So that's another way to kind of correct an error. You can also take like a white gel pen, since this is a white background, and kind of go over some of the areas where the ink may have gone astray and help to hide some of those mistakes and those blemishes. I chose to use this red this red plaid panel, and I chose it mainly because it didn't stamp all that great, and so I knew that I could somewhat position my images to hide that, and I like the red. So I did cut that down to 3 3/4 by 5, and I'm just going to use wet glue and adhere that in the very center of the card base that has my logo stamped on the back, duly noted, and I'm just going to adhere that flat. And then here are all of the critters. Like I said, I'm going to end up taking these sentiments and cut them down into little squares. One of the things that you can do, particularly if someone were to purchase this kit, you can actually stamp the sentiment directly into the belly or into the middle of that heart. I chose not to, just so that would give the purchaser of this kit some more versatility, some more options, some more creative license. I have a handful of Altenew artist markers here. I have Vineyard Berry, that's the red, Volcano Lake, that is the teal or aqua, the Morning Lake, Evening Gray, Lava Rock, and Moon Rock. And I'm going to use those warm grays to color in this cow. I chose to use the cow, and I'm going to color the cow in with those warm grays, and then I'm going to color in the heart with that, what is it called? Volcano Lake, and I chose to color in the hearts the same way. I didn't do any fancy shading. It is all a solid color. I just tried to make sure that I could preserve the face. So I tried not to put really dark colors around the eyes and the nose, just to preserve the face. I have some of these gems from Blinky Thingy off of Etsy, and I'm actually including just a small handful of these in the reds and the teals for these card kits. I felt like they needed something, and so I chose to include some of these. I'm going to adhere everything flat with my liquid glue, and this card kit will be complete. I will package everything up and take pictures and post it to my Etsy site. But I just enjoy making these, and I think that sometimes when I post things on my Etsy website, people don't really know what I'm talking about, just because I use some language that is not familiar to a lot of people. And so I chose to make a video over this card kit, and I will probably do this in the future, just so that people are a little more educated when they go to purchase something. They know a little bit more about what went into it, as well as just kind of overall what they're getting. And so this is a Valentine's Day card kit that I will put on my website, on my Etsy shop, and yeah, so that's all. I will get everything adhered down. I'm having some trouble with my little pickup stick not wanting to pick up these gems. I wonder if they were just too heavy, because it picks up those paper hearts just fine. Yeah, pick those up just fine. So maybe I just need to kind of clean that off a little bit. But anyway, that is all. I'm just going to finish adhering everything down, and this card kit will be all done. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired and that you send some paper hugs to someone that you know and love. And until then, we will catch you next time. Bye.